All right, we're taking off. So, welcome everybody. Good to have you here for the Big Bourbon Club October event with Wilderness Trail Distillery. Raise your hand if you've ever had Wilderness Trail products before. Raise your hand. Some of you guys or gals are living in a basement somewhere. Raise your hand if you've been to Danville, Kentucky to the Wilderness Trail Distillery. Raise it high. Dr. Pat, we've got some work to do. We've got some work to do. Well, we're excited to have one of the hottest, fastest growing distilleries in Kentucky, which means in the world, with us tonight. Dr. Pat Heist is a founder, one of the two partner founders and owners of Wilderness Trail. Would you ever guess that he moonlights in a heavy metal band? He does. But we're really excited to have Pat. Thanks so much for coming out. For those of you, raise your hand if you're not a member of the Big Bourbon Club. Raise it high. All right, we got about 7 or 8 of you. We appreciate you coming out to check it out. We're glad to have you here. So the Big Bourbon Club, we have 3,200 members strong. It's I like to call it the only virtual bourbon club on the planet. I have no idea if that's true, but I've been in marketing my whole life, and I can say whatever I want because I don't think there's any police out there for bourbon clubs, but I think we are the only virtual bourbon club, and most of our members don't live in Kentucky. We have a proprietary app. We get 200 to 300 engagements a day. Maybe it's 20 to 30. It doesn't matter. It's a big number, but we get a lot of people just on the Big Bourbon Club app, like Todd and a lot of other friends who are posting pictures of their pets, of posting pictures of what they're trading or whatever they bought or whatever. But it's a great place. It's a great interactive place for people all over the country. And we have made a lot of good friends, and we've created a lot of great friendships through this. So we would encourage you to look at joining the Big Bourbon Club. If you are a top shelf member, it's $125 a year, which is less than an expensive bottle of bourbon. And we also have a free membership, so join whatever suits you, but we'd love to have you. Once a month here at Joe's, we have a great distillery or brand to present their story to you, and we live stream on Facebook, so everybody can learn about some of these great distilleries. We're excited for that. Did everybody that wanted to purchase a bottle of our Big Bourbon Club Wilderness Trail Barrel Pick, if you didn't get a chance, Rachel would be happy to help you. She's given out taste as well if you haven't had it. We're getting ready to have several expressions to try. But about 5 months ago, Todd Boffman, Jack Meredith, myself, Chris Bride, Ed Comfort went to Danville and we picked this barrel. And I actually, because we were given the choice to pick either a wheated or a rye bourbon, I surveyed our membership. And we had over 500 respondents respond to the survey where the question was, do you prefer a wheat or a rye bourbon in the pick? 92% said a wheated bourbon. So we've selected what we think is an incredibly delicious wheated bourbon. It's going to be the fourth one, the last expression that we try tonight, even though you may have already had some. And so thanks for all of you all for helping out. One other note, my partner in the Big Bourbon Club is Cress Bride. Cress is at Red Rocks watching the Grateful Dead tonight. So when he gets back, I'm going to personally administer a urine test. There's no chance in hell he passes that. But anyway, we thank Cress for his partnership and his support with all of this. Now, question. Rachel came in tonight to help us to take Cress's place. This is a straw vote, so it's not official. It's a straw vote. Raise your hand if you think Rachel did a better job than Cress. Holy sheep shit! Holy sheep shit. Everybody said Rachel did a better job than Cress. Yeah, it depends upon what you like, right? All right, so I'm going to give away a bottle. I'm going to give away a barrel-proof bottle. I know the Callahans know I like to do history trivia. And depending upon if it's Brennan or Rock Wise, you all cannot win this because you all know every history answer I'd ever have. But what battle, this is not the trivia question, but what battle ended today? What major battle ended today? I'll give you a hint, 1781. The American Revolution. You all are terrible. You all are slow. 1781. It wasn't the U.S.-Mexican War, you ding-dong. Okay. Who was the general? Who was in charge? Mr. Callahan? No, that wasn't the question. He always gets excited and goes early. What general, who was the general of the British troops that surrendered on this day in 1781? Cornwallis. So here's the trivia for this bottle, okay? I picked the winner from whoever I want to pick. In Yorktown, Virginia, you are correct. That's where they surrendered. Whose house was Cornwallis and his troops staying at? And the person whose house was in actually shot the cannon that went into his own house to get Cornwallis out. And he signed the Declaration of Independence. And he was a governor of Virginia. No, not Thomas Jefferson. You owe me a bottle you just bought. Give it back. Brennan, anybody know who the governor of Virginia was that signed the Declaration of Independence that shot the cannon into his own house that knocked Cornwallis out? Not Patrick Henry. Not General Washington. No, not Adams. It's not a name you're going to know like that, but he did sign the Declaration. Anybody know? Doug, do you know? Governor Thomas Nelson. Okay, so here's another trivia. All right, I'm making this one up. Who said this quote? Who said this quote? Great explorer, went on a 3-year hunting trip. He got back. Someone asked him if he was ever lost. He goes, no, I was not lost, but I was bewildered once for 3 days. Daniel Boone. Daniel Boone. There you go. All right. I was plumb out of trivia. Give Dr. Pat Heiss a warm Big Bourbon Club welcome. Dr. Heiss.
Thanks, everyone, for coming out tonight. And I really appreciate being invited out here tonight. Spend some time with you guys. This looks like a pretty cool place. I haven't ever been here before. So does everybody have the weeded bourbon? I figured before I start yapping on introductory material, we might as well get started on the first bourbon. So the first whiskey that we're going to try here tonight, this is our weeded bourbon. So some people refer to it as the yellow label bourbon because it's got a yellow label. But this is a bottle in bond. So bottle in bond signifies several things. The whiskey was made at the distillery that it was bottled at. It was made in a single distilling season. It's bottled at 100 proof. And if it says bottle in bond on there, it's at least 4 years old. So when we started selling whiskey, we started with a bottle in bond. So, and when you wait 4 years to get money back out of a business, trust me, it means a lot whenever you make that first dollar back, which we blew it all on a distillery expansion. But anyway, the first one we're trying is our weeded bourbon, the yellow label up here. And those of you who are familiar with our brands or those of you who are not familiar with our brands, if you look on the side, there's several bottles I see scattered out across the tables. If you look on the side of the bottle, we actually list our mash recipe. So this one is 64% corn, 24% wheat, and 12% malted barley. So the different combination of grains really is what, kind of makes the bourbon. And those of you who have the barrel pick, which we'll taste in a little bit, that's actually got more information on the actual barrel warehouse, the yeast that was used, as well as the exact age of the whiskey. So, but anyway, while I'll give you some introductory material about myself and the distillery, I want to go ahead and get everybody started off with the weeded bourbon. So, how did we ever start Wilderness Trail Distillery? My business partner and I, which we met playing in a rock band back in the 90s, kind of a, sort of a unique way to meet somebody. But we played in a rock band in the 90s, and we weren't the typical rock band, mainly because we all actually had real jobs outside of the rock band. So I was finishing up a PhD at the University of Kentucky in plant pathology, and Shane, my business partner, he was already an established mechanical engineer and was working in venture capital. So, again, we're kind of jamming out a little bit in Danville. I don't think we ever got paid anything for playing outside of beers. But so I finished my PhD in plant pathology and then kind of took a strange turn into medical microbiology. I ended up being a medical microbiology professor at the Pikeville College School of Osteopathic Medicine. And so, going from plant pathology, helping farmers and agriculture deal with microbial diseases of different field crops, to medical microbiology, just seemed like the next logical step is to get into distilled spirits production. So, as a medical microbiology professor, it sort of broadened my horizons on, how different drugs, you use different drugs to treat bacterial infections versus fungal infections, which, over in the distilling world, you got the yeast doing the fermentation, you got contaminating bacteria coming in there sometimes. And so I started consulting for a company that sold yeast to fuel alcohol distilleries. And then after about 2 or 3 years of doing the consulting, I realized that it would be a good idea to start our own business. So I got together with Shane, with his business experience and being a mechanical engineer, and again, I'm a PhD microbiologist. So we started a company back in 2006 called Ferm Solutions, Ferm as in fermentation. So we sell yeast to fuel alcohol distilleries, beverage alcohol distilleries, beer companies, hard seltzer, anything that's got to do with fermentation. A couple weeks ago, I helped a guy make Menma. Has anybody ever heard of Menma? That's fermented bamboo shoots that you put in ramen. So anything that's got to do with fermentation, even non-alcoholic fermented beverages like kombucha and kefir, which are really popular. So we do a lot of work in fermentation. Now, one thing, if you all ever want to start your own yeast company that you want to be aware of, is yeast gets the blame for every problem that a distillery has. So if you're the yeast provider, you better get ready to get that phone call whenever the fermenter's not bubbling like it should, because this damn yeast must not be working right. So we get the distress call from the distilleries, this damn yeast ain't working, and we respond with, okay, most of the time it's not the yeast. We got to figure this out. What's the grain quality looking like? Are we converting the starch into fermentable sugars? Is there bacterial contamination? Is it too hot? Is the pH off? There's a lot of different things that can affect fermentation besides the yeast. So over a period of about 7 or 8 years, we kind of found ourselves in a situation operating a very successful yeast business. Just to give you an idea of the magnitude of our yeast business, we sell about 15 tons of yeast per day just to hard seltzer producers, not counting fuel alcohol, beverage alcohol, beer, whatever. And we got about 10 other products too that we sell even more of than yeast. So we had this thriving company. We're taking phone calls from some of the most famous master distillers in the world, helping them out with their problems. And then one day it just kind of clicked. We need to have our own distillery. So instead of buying Lamborghinis, we bought a distillery. So we started distilling in 2013. So our oldest bourbons are going to turn 8 years old end of this month. So we started Wilderness Trail back in 2013. It was a very logical progression for us because we do a lot of training for distilleries here in Kentucky and even around the United States and around the world. So having a distillery kind of factored into that. Hey, when we bring people in for training, rather than just whiteboarding everything and lecture hall stuff, we've got a distillery here that we can utilize to, in our training. So we're making 1 barrel a day 8 years ago, and that was about 250, 300 days out of the year. We bought some property, and built our first barrel warehouse, a 2,200 barrel warehouse, which was supposed to be our forever house. 300 barrels a year times 5 years, that's 1,500 barrels. That gives us a little wiggle room, 2,200 barrel house. So we started on that path and then very quickly realized, we can grow this distillery, we can grow this brand, but we got to have more production. We also do a good bit of contract manufacturing. 10 or so years ago when the big bourbon boom just kind of started happening, a lot of the big producers were producing tens of thousands of barrels for other brands. And so we started seeing there's a lot of people that need whiskey produced. So we actually completed our last expansion. 2018, we went from 1 barrel a day to 220 barrels a day. We're currently the 14th largest bourbon producer in the world and just became the 18th member of the Kentucky Bourbon Trail. So yeah, you could say that things have shit's hit the fan out there at Wilderness Trail. I know personally, that being, we started off on the Kentucky Bourbon Trail Craft Tour, and then recently became members of the Kentucky Bourbon Trail. But, a lot of people who have not heard about us or, who kind of consider us as part of a craft movement, when you come onto our warehouse, onto our site, we're filling a 24,000 barrel warehouse every 150 days, which means we got to build about 3 every year. So, the place is littered with barrel warehouses where our production, we're up to about 65 to 70,000 barrels a year now. So, going from, which one of the things we're seeing is a very big impact on the local community. We've got a lot of tourists coming in. We went from 800 pounds of grain a day to 190,000 pounds of grain a day. Again, we're buying, lots of barrels, building a lot of barrel warehouses. So we're starting to see bourbon-themed restaurants going up in the town, and hotels are increasing. So, but anyway, that's a little bit of background on our company, Firm Solutions, as well as Wilderness Trail Distillery. What does everybody think about the bourbon? I see a bunch of empty glasses here. I'm thinking, looks like it's going pretty good. So a couple other interesting points about this particular bourbon. This is a wheated bourbon, but our wheated bourbon is always sold as a single barrel. So everything in that sample came out of one single barrel. There wasn't any multiple barrels blended together, which there's nothing wrong with blending multiple barrels, but just to let you know, that's a single barrel. And again, it's bottled in bond, so it's 100 proof. And another interesting thing that we do is a sweet mash recipe. Everybody heard of sour mash? So sour mash is where when you're mashing, you're mixing those milled grains in with the hot water to make the mash. You add a portion of liquid left over from a previous distillation to get sour mash. And there's several reasons why distilleries do that. If anybody's got 35 minutes after this is over, I'll be happy to explain it to you. But anyway, that's what a sour mash is. We do a sweet mash, which is where you start with all fresh water and fresh grains every time. Sour mash is one of the reasons why you'll hear why do distilleries do sour mashes, is because it acidifies the mash and makes it less susceptible to microbial contamination. Well, we're the company that people call whenever they have microbial contamination, so the way we control microbial contamination is by keeping just a real damn clean distillery. So that's just one of the differences between us and other distilleries. It's all good. I've enjoyed every sour mash whiskey I've ever tried, but it's just one of the things that makes us a little bit different. Now, the next one that we're going to try is a very similar recipe to this. So the one you just tasted is a wheated bourbon, 64% corn, 24% wheat, 12% malted barley. This next one, which hopefully I'll get a sample too, hint, hint. I need to be able to differentiate between all the different bourbons. But this next one is the same recipe, but instead of having wheat as the middle grain, it's got rye as the middle grain. So a good example of a wheated bourbon versus a rye bourbon. Now, these days, there's a lot of different lingo going around. You know, like we talked about single barrel, we talked about bottle and bond. The sample that you're getting now, this is a small batch, so it's actually multiple barrels batched together to make this. And it's also considered a high rye bourbon. Most bourbons that have rye as the middle grain are made with less than 20% rye. So we make ours with 24% rye. So anytime you have a rye bourbon that is over 20% rye, one of the terms is a high rye bourbon. Now, we don't say that's a high wheat bourbon, the one we just tried, but it applies to the rye bourbon. So this is a high rye bourbon. It's also bottled in bond, so it's bottled at 100 proof, just like the wheated bourbon. Good example of a wheated bourbon versus a bourbon that has rye in it. Same recipe, just one's got wheat, one's got rye. We distill to about 137 proof, and we barrel at 110 proof. The highest allowable proof by law is 125 proof. We go in at 110, and there's reasons for that related to what type of chemicals are we trying to extract out of that barrel. Some of those chemicals are alcohol soluble, some of them are water soluble. So you want the right balance of alcohol and water. We also barrel at a lower proof than a lot of other distilleries because just like this barrel pick, which I think is 108 proof, you know, personally, I find it hard to take a barrel proof that's 130-something proof. So coming out of the barrel, going into the barrel at 110, usually we're coming out 113 to 118, but it's a very enjoyable proof for what we like. And again, whenever you get your own distillery, you just do shit that you like yourself. So that's one of the other fringe benefits of having your own distillery. Yep.
Hey, let me ask, can everybody hear okay? It's extremely loud up here. Can everybody in the audience? Okay. Everybody who's not part of the Big Bourbon Club, if you all would be sensitive to the fact that the event is very hard to hear, we would really appreciate it. If it's, I've asked twice now. Hey, folks in the back, not you, Ray. Hey, folks, we would appreciate your patience with what we're trying to do here, okay? Before we continue on, a couple of questions have come up on Facebook Live. Before we go there, any questions in the audience for Pat? Any questions? Well, let me start. This is an easy answer for you. Alex Calling in Little Rock asked on Facebook Live, what % of your whiskey is sourced versus how much you've made?
We've always only sold stuff that we've made. Yeah. Now, we broker a lot of whiskey with our other company, so we've got barrels coming in and out of various brands. We store for other brands, but we've never released anything in a Wilderness Trail bottle that wasn't Wilderness Trail. Yeah, and we waited a full 4 years to release a product because we want it to be bottle in bond.
Mike Davis, we have a question out in the audience. So,
yeah, we actually do. Yeah. If you look at really, okay, first of all, in that fermenter, you've got 150 to 250 million yeast cells per thimble full of mash. So that's essentially like the immune system of the fermenter. The types of bacteria that contaminate fermentation aren't the ones that are found on your finger. I mean, we're definitely sensitive to that, but there's probably enough wasps and other critters that make their way into the fermenter to where somebody touching it every now and then isn't going to really matter. It gets very acidic very quickly, so that's just not. And again, we're experts. We have a collection of over 75,000 different bacteria that we've cultured from distilleries all over the world, and they're just not the type of bacteria that you find on human skin.
all right.
If it was, we'd be worried about it.
Question over here, Jeff Underhide.
How surprised were you or your family after your incredible education to find yourself in the bourbon business?
Well, you know, I really have always just kind of done what I like to do. It's sort of haphazardly come along. Now, when I became a faculty member at Moonshine University, that probably was the most proudest moment of my mother's life. Recently, I became an adjunct professor at the James A. Beam Institute at the University of Kentucky. So, again, the accolades keep piling up there. So that's why I had to get into a rock band. I'm also lead singer of a rock band called ZLMA, so we had to capitalize on all the different angles there, make my mom proud she could possibly be. Got a question? Yep, Peerless Distilling in Louisville here. They're one of the ones that do sweet mash, and there are several others that proclaim sweet mash. I mean, if you look at, one of the things one of the biggest problems we have to deal with is all the leftovers after distillation. So at our distillery, we generate 100,000 gallons of stillage a day. So managing that out there, we give it away to cattle farmers, which sounds, oh, that's a great deal, but if they're not coming to pick it up, we got to shut the still down. So we've got to manage that in and out of there every day, and to be able to incorporate 20 to 30% of that back into your process, that helps manage that. Well, also, the other thing is heat recovery. That stuff's coming off the still really hot. You recover some of that heat. We have other ways of getting that heat back. But if you look at new distilleries, or when we first started, we were only distilling in a one-shift operation. So if that stuff sits in a tank and gets cold by the next day, you're not recovering heat. It's really more of a pain in the ass than anything. So that's another reason why we started off as sweet mash, because it just sort of suited how we were set up when we started very small.
Hey, Pat, we have another question on Facebook Live. How many distilleries do you sell your yeast to?
I would say we do business with at least 300 to 400 different distilleries. And the reason for that spread is, we'll do business, we'll drop out, we'll do business. I mean, it's kind of a fluctuating thing. We have competitors out there that, steal our business away. We're stealing their business every day. But we're in a unique situation that, we also have a distillery. So nowadays when our competitors, get into the picture, hey, we'll use our yeast instead of their yeast. It's like, where's their fucking distillery at? Just to let you know. It's like, shit, man, here's our bottle in bottle. Well, what does the yeast do to the distillate? Well, right here, try a bottle of this award-winning spirit here. And by the way, whenever they come ask you to do business, where the hell's their damn distillery at? So, those are some things that have kind of helped us out. And, but I don't know if that answers the
Last question on Facebook until we go to this next expression. Someone was watching the Tennessee football game last weekend, which in and of itself is a big problem to me, but they said they had a guy had a beard like yours, and he had an orange and white checkerboard on the beard.
Okay.
And because you're a UK graduate, undergrad and graduate school, would you do the same thing, blue and white, for the next game?
I would. Not saying I will, but I'm definitely.
Well, and that was a bunch of bullshit because I just made that up.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you one thing. I don't know anyone else that went to school at UK for 13 motherfucking years, so I'm that guy, I tell my kids
hold
every
on.
day.
Hey, Charles Renee, we need to be on a 10-second delay on this live stream.
Yeah. So anyway, I went to school at UK for 13 years. Now, I did get a bachelor's, a master's, and a PhD out of it. So, but yeah. I tell my kids you can get it done a lot quicker nowadays. Yeah. Yeah. Number 3?
No, we're on 2, aren't we?
Oh, well, I thought we did 2.
Raise your hand if you've had number 2 already.
Yeah.
Well, I tell you what, I haven't, so let me ask a question. What did you get? What do you get on the nose? Yell it out. What's the bouquet of this? I've got a number 2's better than 1. What do you think? Which one so far do you like? 2? Raise your hand if 2 would be your preference. Oh, Dr. Pat, we got about half.
Yeah.
Raise your hand if number 1's your favorite. Probably about half.
About half and half. Well, number two being a bourbon with rye as a middle grain, that's really more. I mean, most bourbons made in Kentucky have rye as a middle grain. The first one has wheat as a middle grain. So if you look at some of the really popular wheated bourbons, you're talking like Maker's Mark, Weller, Pappy Van Winkle, those types of products. The second one is a rye bourbon, so it's more like, I mean, in terms of recipe, like Buffalo Trace, Jim Beam, a lot of these other brands. So I would say if I'm buying a bottle of our bourbon for somebody and I don't know anything about what they like, I'm going to get them the one we just tried, which is the high rye bourbon. If I know they're a bourbon fan, I'm going to get them the wheated bourbon. And I think we're going to do number three, yep. So the third one here, kind of shifting gears. So we had a wheated bourbon, we had a rye bourbon. Now we're going to try our rye whiskey. So the rye whiskey, some people also call it our green label because it's got a green label. Our rye whiskey is always bottled as a single barrel at cask strength. So this one is 106 proof. When we first started making our rye whiskey, we would go in at 100 proof and 110 proof. So this likely went into the barrel at 100 proof, and after 4 or 5 years, however old this one is, it came out at 106. So just let you know. So this is single barrel. There was 250 bottles in that barrel, and this is bottle number 214. That's the rye whiskey. So to be a rye whiskey, we talked about to be a bourbon, it's got to have over 51% corn. And our bourbons we tried has 64% corn. This one's a rye whiskey, so it's got to have over 51% rye. And our rye whiskey, again, it's on the side of the bottle, but 56% rye, 33% corn, and 11% malted barley.
So, Pat, question. This is my question. Why do you only bottle your rye at cask strength?
Because we love it that way, and we do it like we like.
Thank you very much for the very direct answer. Mike Davis.
We'll probably do at least 1, maybe 2 bottles of 8 year now. The really what you want to do is on our website, wildernesstrailky.com. We're actually somehow also got KentuckyStraightBourbon.com. Somebody must have been snoozing out that day. But, yeah, in the midst of all of our fermentation brilliance, we'll snag up websites, too, if we can get them. But anyhow, if you go to our website and become a Family Tree member and get our newsletters, we'll be doing announcements for that. Yeah. So, yeah, we got some 8 year coming up. So this one here, again, this is a rye whiskey. This is single barrel strength. So everything in that glass is 100% exactly what came out of the barrel. Yeah, I like this one. I really like this one. And to be a single barrel strength, like I said, man. Well, one of the things, even though most distilleries in Kentucky use rye in their recipe, we're one of the only Kentucky distilleries that uses Kentucky-grown rye in the recipe. It really makes it unique. Yeah. And one thing about Kentucky-grown rye, once we, saw some of it, we realized why other distilleries use rye grown outside of Kentucky because it looks more like grass seed than like normal rye. But we took it into the laboratory, and we did the tests on it. It's got good starch content. It's got good moisture content. It can be grown, and we can get a good price by getting it local. It's a whole nother crop that they're not normally grown here in Kentucky that we can support. And it's just got a damn good flavor. So that's several reasons why we stuck with Kentucky-grown rye. But it makes it very different. And, again, our rye whiskey, most ryes on the shelf are 95% rye, 5% malted barley. This is 56 rye, 33 corn. So we consider this as a Kentucky rye because it's got a good bit of corn in it. It's got a little bit of sweetness from the corn, a lot of that Kentucky-grown rye, flavor that we get. And then also going in the barrel at a lower proof. So this would have likely went into the barrel at 100, which is 20 proof points low, 25 proof points lower than what you can go into the barrel at legally. Yeah, I really like it. Yep. Yep. So the first one was a wheated bourbon, and when you look at, what does corn do to the bourbon? It makes it sweet. What does rye do? It makes it spicy. Well, what does wheat do? It makes it smooth. It makes it there's different adjectives used to describe wheat that really don't tell you shit. It's like it's smooth. Well, okay, I think I understand what that means, but the way I look at wheat, it sort of leaves an open window to the barrel. So you really get the benefit of what the barrel's giving you, and then as it gets older, then things start to get more complicated and concentrated. But that's one of the things that wheat does, is it allows you to taste more what the barrel's giving you early on. So that could be one of the things, whereas the spiciness of the rye kind of covers that up a little bit. So, well, rye is a pain in the ass to ferment. So when you get right down to it, rye is harder to mill, so we got to slow down our feed to the mills, so the amount of rye that we're grinding at any given time. Rye is abrasive to the equipment. Whenever we look at our stillage, copper, the amount of copper that ends up in our stillage, which is our stills degrading over time, it almost 3x when we run rye because it's more abrasive to the equipment. Rye, another thing they say about rye, and we deal with this all the time in our Firm Solutions business, is rye foams like a bitch. There ain't nothing you can do about it. So we use anti-foams. Well, the first time that we ever ran a high rye, we weren't really astute to what happens in a rye fermenter. And when that fermenter was done foaming over, there was 7 foot of empty headspace in it. So nowadays we add anti-foams. We'll set the gravity lower so it's a less vigorous fermentation. We'll set the level of the fermenter lower to allow for more expansion, and we just keep a damn good eye on it. There are various food-grade anti-foams, and for a 20,000-gallon fermenter, we're putting a cap full. It's just something to break the surface tension on the top. You can even add, if you start a distillery and you get a fermenter foaming over on you, grab some corn oil and put that on there. That's one of the things. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, when that shit starts foaming over, man, it's just, I remember coming in one day and I was like, oh my God, that's a great example of fermentation. I took a picture of it. That sumbitch was over the top, and about 30 minutes after that great picture that I took. So, but those are some of the things you got to watch out with rye. I really like this rye, though. Yep. I was just in Sweden last month and up against a bunch of Scotch drinkers. And, they really love the rye. The rye was the biggest hit over there. I mean, went over there to try to sell them bourbon, and they probably took more to the rye than anything. And bringing Scotch producers over to Kentucky whiskey is a hard thing to do.
Okay, Dr. Pat, we're on the 7th drink, and I haven't even got to my sponsors yet. How we doing?
Awesome.
All right, so they're pouring the 4th expression.
Which is your all's barrel pick.
It's the barrel pick. We're finishing the rye now. What do you all think about the rye? Dr. Pat, we've been practicing for a week. These people are slow, but they did good there. So someone just told me here, someone that drinks a lot of rye, said this is the best rye he's ever had.
Nice. Thank you.
This guy. Brennan.
We make 3. So a wheated bourbon, the high rye bourbon, and the rye whiskey. The 4th expression is actually a barrel pick of our wheated bourbon. So it's, instead of bottle in bond, it's single barrel strength. So it'll be at cask strength, and it's also single barrel. We've got a 4 grain. well, like one day we were making like I think a wheated bourbon, and we ran out of wheat like halfway through adding it. So we had some rye on hand, and we ground the rest of it. That's a barrel of 4 grain that we made. Now we make hundreds of barrels of 4 grain every year, but that first couple years we just made that one barrel. So that's actually going to come out in our gift shop probably as like a cancer awareness type. We do a lot of American Cancer Society fundraisers and stuff, so I think that's going to be fundraiser type. But it's only one barrel. It's the only barrel of 4 grain we ever made up until recently, and it's coming out as a 6 year. So we also have a 6 year age stated bottle and bond, both on the wheat and the rye bourbon. You just got to look for it. It's pretty rare. Yep. Well, yeah, that's right. On the 6 year, the only way to differentiate the bottles is look at the recipe on the side because they look the same. But it's age stated 6 year. It's a gray label, and it's got 6 at the top of it. Yep. Yeah, Liquor Barn. I mean, it's all over the place in Louisville. Yep. And if any place doesn't have it, give them a hard time about it. Appreciate that. Yeah. Yep, green label.
Hey, Paul, you can also buy some of my barrel pick right over there. Unlimited quantities. Forget the rye. Wait till this fourth expression. Yes, sir, young man. Son-in-law.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we've got 8 year coming around the corner. I mean, we've got plans for 10 year, 12 year. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I want to see some Wilderness Trail 12 year wheat on the shelf. Well, if you could find Weller 12, it'd be on the shelf next to it. But next to the empty spot where Weller 12 is supposed to go, I'd like to see some Wilderness Trail Wheater 12 on the shelf as well. In Kentucky, so we're in 36 states with Wilderness Trail, and the only 2 states we're not allocated in is Kentucky and California. California, we actually sell more whiskey than we do in Kentucky, which is weird because we don't have any employees in California, which means we got a damn good distributor out there really working hard for us. Yeah. Well, yeah.
Hey, Pat, before you say anything, he just sold his company for a big number, so he knows what he's talking about.
Okay, well, hey, man. Uh-huh.
What other questions you all have? We have Tom.
Well, I mean, when you look at the barrels, there's a lot more to talk about than just the char. So you look at the quality of wood, which that's hopefully a given if you got a good barrel supplier. The amount of time that the wood was seasoned or air dried prior to construction of the barrel. Most Kentucky bourbon goes into the barrel a 3 to 6 month air dried barrel. We do 18 to 24 month. So that kind of process of degradation of the wood increases the porosity of the wood. It breaks down very large, complex wood chemicals into smaller chemicals, as does the charring process, makes it more easily to extract. If anybody's got 10 minutes of extra time, I actually did a TED Talk on the effect of climate change on bourbon. So it's about a 10-minute talk, but it's, explains a lot of the different things about what's happening with the barrel in the manufacturing of the barrel, but what's also happening in that barrel as that barrel ages. So you've got chemical reactions. You're extracting chemicals from the wood. There's chemical reactions that are occurring over time. Alcohols condensing with organic acids to form esters, for example. There is evaporative loss that is occurring. So there's a lot of different things. And then you got north to south facing barrel warehouses, east to west. I mean, a 2,200 barrel house versus a 10,000 versus a 24,000 barrel house. So there's a lot of factors to consider. And then the char also. We do a number 4 char, which when we started, I think we were just kind of like, we want the darkest bourbon possible. Turns out a number 1 char will damn near give you darker bourbon than number 4. We're just going all the way. Like we're cranking it up to 11. Well, can we do a number 5 char? There wouldn't be anything left of the barrel. So we wanted to crank it up as much as possible. That's probably why we went with the number 4 char. What's the best? Let's decide that within like a second.
Hey, Pat, we got a question from Facebook. If maybe you've touched on this, but I don't think so. But do you have any international sales right now?
Yep, we're currently in England and Germany, and we just are getting into Sweden and Denmark.
How big is that market for you going forward?
Well, right now, we're just trying to keep from getting murdered by rabid bourbon fans over in those countries. So send the ones who are getting ready to put us on their hit list some damn bottles and get that, satisfied. And then long term, because, again, it's real easy for us to figure out what our sales are going to be. We just look at how many barrels are we willing to open this year. So, again, we're in 36 states, and we're allocated in every state except for Kentucky and California. So we're deciding, hey, Texas can only get this much. North Carolina can only get this much, which it's sad to have a business with you got demand, but you just don't have the supply.
Is allocation a metric that you make a decision on, or is it more the distribution firm?
Well, it's our decision to how much are we going to allocate to any state, but then it's the distributor's decision where's that allocation going to go to. So in some ways it's good for us where we're growing because it creates this, sometimes people see bottles whenever the shelf's been empty for a while, I better get all 12 of these instead of just grab one of them. So, and I'm the same damn way. I buy more. If I've ever made a dime off of either of these businesses, I've spent it on barrel picks. So I'm getting a little deep at the house, you could say.
All right, so with questions, I'm going to give you the microphone because it's hard to hear. Anybody have any questions? I'll hand you the microphone. Young man, were you going to ask a question? Hold on, I'll bring it to you. Huh? I'll bring it to you.
What is the state that
Tops.
needs the most?
It's California.
Really?
Kentucky's
I
just
totally
barely
believe-
behind it.
I totally believe that.
Yep.
Last time I was in California, the top thing they had was Bullet.
Yeah,
That was
that's
it.
huge
I
out there.
couldn't find nothing else.
Yep.
California, unique. That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was in San Francisco a couple weeks ago and went to a really good bourbon bar. I didn't even know if they'd have our stuff, and they did. And the bartender was telling me about the legend of myself before I, actually told him who I was. He said, yeah, they got scientists out there, and they do. I asked him, hey, do you got Wilderness Trail? And he said, yeah, you want the wheat at single barrel or the small batch high rye? And I was like, damn, man, this dude knows.
Did you just say the legend of myself?
Yep, pretty much.
That is
Yep.
awesome. That's awesome. Hey, Achu, you have any questions? Stand up. Got, no.
Thank you.
Yes. Entrepreneurship is amazing. Like, how did you go from like a safe job to like starting your own business?
Well, it's sort of like walking up to the edge of a cliff and jumping straight over the edge and not knowing for sure if you're going to smack the bottom and die or get hit with a limb on the way down. But, I don't know. We've always had a lot of confidence in what we've done. And, our companies are not encumbered by a lot of bureaucracy. So me and my business partner, we own 100% of both businesses. We've always paid our way as we went along, and so we can make decisions very quickly. So if something makes sense, if you get a deal where I can buy something for $100,000, I can sell it for $1 million, you don't got to break out calculators to figure out what's going
Come
on.
on. Did you say you
So-
don't have to break out calculators?
Well, I'm just saying,
Love it.
yeah. Some things don't require a spreadsheet whenever you kind of do a thought experiment and it comes out so far ahead. So we make decisions very quickly, and that's one of the things that's allowed us to be very nimble in growing these businesses. And I'll give a lot of that credit to my business partner.
So let me, Pat, let me take a quick break, and I'm going to thank our sponsors for sponsoring the Big Bourbon Club in tonight's event. But we have one official sponsor, which means they write a big old check. Blue and Company and Rockwise, they're partners here. So thank you very much to Blue and Company. If you're a distillery and you're not sure about your CPA, this is Blue and Company over here. So just that's what he told me to say. Whiskey Grail, Justin's House of Bourbon, Mint Julep Tours, Bourbon City Cruisers, Wesley's Wicks, the Whiskey Army, Bourbon Women, Tag Swag, Charles Renee, under production. Charles is in the back, live streaming this. Thank you, Charles. And lastly, the Fraser Museum. So thank you for all of your support. We really appreciate it. All right, are we ready, ladies, for the fourth and final? Okay, so this is the barrel pick, right? This is the barrel pick. It's a weeded. Pat, what's the mash on this?
So just like the first one we tried, which was the bottle and bond wheated, this is 64% corn, 24% wheat, 12% malted barley, and this one is single barrel strength. So this is exactly 100% what got dumped out of that barrel. Now, interestingly about this pick, this one is 108 proof. So we would have went into the barrel at 110 proof. So it's kind of remarkable that it came out at a lower proof than what it would have went in. Now, a little secret about whenever we first started distilling, we were getting barreling like 5 barrels a week. We'd get a truckload of barrels. Not only would my business partner and I have to unload the barrel truck in like hour and 30 minutes, but we didn't use barrels very quickly, so we did a leak check on the barrels. So we would put hot water in the barrels to see if they leaked before we put the whiskey in. That's back when we had plenty of time to screw around. Now we're like, we fill a barrel every 2 minutes, so we don't got time to fart around with leak checks. So what might have made this a little lower proof is we did a leak check on it first as a possibility, which kind of makes it interesting. So that's one thing I'm noticing here. Another thing is when you get a barrel pick, there's an extra in addition to the label on the side that tells you the mash recipe and some other information. On the side here, it tells you exactly how old it was. This is 4 years, 7 months. This was in an independent stave, number 4 char barrel, stored in Rickhouse A, which is that little 2,200 barrel Rickhouse that we started with. This is using our Firm Pro 1 yeast strain. So we use about 9 different yeast strains currently. That would have been our FP1, which is I'll give you one guess where we buy our yeast from. It's Firm Solutions. Firm Solutions, just in case you're wondering.
So when you buy your yeast from your sister company, do you get different yeast strains for the different expressions?
Yeah. We have a collection of about 9,500 different yeast strains, and from that we've got about 36 different yeast that we market to beer, hard seltzer, fuel alcohol, as well as beverage alcohol, like distilled spirits.
So
What's that? Well, it depends on what volume they're making it on. So that's kind of the name of the game. When we make yeast, we make 80 tons at a time. And that's about what you got to make to be competitive with other yeast companies. And it also helps that most of the yeast companies that we compete against, they're the same ones that are making our yeast. So it's kind of like a little bit of it's an interesting situation. Yep. Yep, so most of our stuff goes via truck. So LTL, LTL, full truckload shipping. Yeah. And again, we're in the next 2 years, we'll have 5 times the inventory. Another 4 or 5 years, we'll have 10 times the inventory that we're working with. So we went from making 300 barrels a year to stocking back 35,000 barrels a year for our brands.
Let's talk for a second about the fourth. Has everyone had a taste of the barrel pick? Raise your hand if you did not have a taste yet. Okay, so everybody's had it. Tell us, yell out loud, because it's loud in here. Yell out what you get, what flavor profile, what notes do you get? What is it? Car-
Yeah, I'm getting that. Good caramel.
caramel? What else y'all get? Butterscotch?
Butterscotch. A little fruit. Yep.
What do
I
you
get
say?
that.
Do you say fruit?
I get cherry kind of.
So it's weeded. It's kind of sweet, right? I get cherry for sure.
Yeah, I get plum. I get raisin. Those kind of things.
What else y'all get? Is it spicy? Is it hot? You get a nice Kentucky hug on it? All right.
108 proof. That's good for a single barrel strength.
So let me, hey guys, ladies, let me take a straw vote. So we've tried 4 different ones. It's not always easy. But I'm going to call out 1, 2, 3, 4. Raise your hand on which one you would say would be your favorite. Okay? Raise your hand if you like number 1 the best. All right, we've got one contrarian at the Callahan table. That's unusual. It's usually a lot of contrarians. Number 2, who liked number 2 the best? We've got 4, 5. Number 3, the rye. A lot of ryes. And number 4, the barrel pick. Okay. Does anybody know what day December 25th is? Christmas Day. Buy your gifts early. There's about 7 cases. I'm just saying. I'm trying to be helpful.
Well,
I'm
tell
in
you
marketing
something,
and
like,
sales.
And something that might
Everybody's in sales.
something that might boost your marketing a little bit is that if I'm not mistaken, we're not doing any more weeded picks for the rest of the year. So
Okay, did you hear that?
That's another thing to consider. And
They're not doing any more
personally-
weeded picks.
Personally, whenever I see
Do
a
you-
weeded barrel
hey,
pick,
Pat, do you find, I think with the Buffalo Trace phenomenon, the weeded bourbon has gotten kind of crazy. Has that expanded down to your 2 different expressions where you get more interest in wheat than rye?
well, with us, the first bourbon we came out with was our weeded bourbon. And I think for that reason, our weeded sales are ahead of our other sales. But so I think there's a little bit of a frenzy. It's also single barrel, so people gravitate towards that. But there's not many weeded bourbons out there. And there's not any distilleries that I know of making a weeded and a rye bourbon with the same recipe. So that's another thing that drives people to buy one or the other of ours. So, but I don't know. I think it's a combination of factors.
So, hey, let me, everybody hold it down in the room here, please. I'm going to ask Pat a question that I asked him earlier, but I want him to tell you. So, Pat, you own a great distillery, an international distillery, one of the fastest growing distilleries in the world, right? Where do you see Wilderness Trail in 5 years from now? Where do you see it? Let them go. Hey, the table of 5 people in the back. The 5 people in the back, please. Please. 80 people are having trouble hearing. Thank you. Okay, sorry.
So, 5 years from now, we'll have 12-year-old whiskey, 12-year-old bourbon, 12-year-old rye whiskeys. So that'll be one big difference. A lot of people, what are you guys doing to innovate? It's like, hell, man, we're making 3 damn different mash bills. Most of the big distilleries make one mash bill, and then you can do it at 90 proof, bottle in bond, single barrel, small batch. So even with one, you can do 6-year, 8-year, 10-year, 12-year. So even with one mash recipe, you can do a lot of different expressions. So we're doing 3 different mash recipes, so there's a lot of ways of spinning it. And again, like I said, we're getting into 4 grain. We've talked about doing some barrel finishing experiments, but really, as scientists, we want to get real comfortable with our base spirits before we go trying to make educated decisions about changing it somehow. You got to be familiar with that baseline. And so that's kind of, 5 years from now, hopefully we'll be kind of more established. And, again, in addition to getting into older expressions, getting a better handle on what is our baseline so that if we change something, we'll know how it changes.
So when we started, I asked you if you've ever tasted a wilderness trail, and I don't know, 30 or 40% had never tasted it. I'm going to ask you another question. Are you more likely to go purchase a bottle of Wilderness Trail today, now that you've met Dr. Pat, you've tasted several different expressions, than you were before you got here tonight? Raise your hand if you think you would add this. There you go. Good.
Well, thank you.
You know, at the end of the day, the stories almost are almost as important as the bourbon, and maybe sometimes more important. What a great story, and what great bourbon, and what a great combination. And another economic engine for Kentucky, for all of Kentucky, not just Central Kentucky. And I'm not saying goodnight yet, but what a great story y'all have, Pat.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Questions?
Well, I mean, we worked with our local economic development, and they, kind of introduced us to several properties. Now, the interesting thing about where we're located, if anybody's ever visited there, it's a very picturesque, Kentucky, rolling hills. But we're on the kind of the little country corner of the industrial park. So we got big utilities. I mean, we work with hundreds of distilleries. It's so tempting to, oh my God, look at this spot. I can imagine having tourists in here. It's going to be beautiful. Let's do this. You build a factory there and there's no utilities and you're shit out of luck. So being in the industrial park, but also having the charm of country, kind of rolling landscape. Now when we bought the property that we're on now, there's a home that's on the property that was built in the 1850s. And being industrial park property, that home would have been on the chopping block to get destroyed if somebody else had bought that. So we were able to incorporate that. And where we don't have, my business partner, his grandmother actually worked at Stitzel Weller, and his grandfather back in Shively back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And so we've got a little bit of history in bourbon. Anybody that's born and raised in Kentucky, you're going to have a history in bourbon. But that home on the property kind of gives us a little centerpiece of historic Kentucky that is helpful for us. So that was a big part of why we bought the place. And, we started our business in another building in Danville and then moved out to that. In 8 years, it's went from a home which had 2 fence rows up the side of it and cow shit as far as the eye could see to 165 acres of just beautiful landscaping and barrel warehouses. Well, any water that's produced in Kentucky is going to be filtered through limestone. We actually use municipal water coming in to ferment with, which is limestone filtered water. But working with hundreds of distilleries and knowing, some of them use well water, some use municipal water, some catch rainwater off the roof. There's some use lakes and rivers to pull their water from. So there's a lot of flexibility in where you can get your water. But anywhere in Kentucky, you're going to have limestone filtered water.
Got a question in the back.
Explain a little bit how, when we put bourbon in a barrel at 125 proof, how it can get to higher proof?
Yeah, so when you look at what's in the barrel, mostly alcohol and also some water. So if it goes into the barrel at 120 proof, it's 60% pure alcohol. So I was talking to a chemist not too long ago, and we were talking about, hey, as bourbon ages, the proof goes up, okay? So you're losing more water than you're losing alcohol. Now, ask a chemist which is more volatile, alcohol or water, and the easy answer is alcohol. It's more volatile. It boils at a lower boiling point than water. But the thing is, in a barrel, to get out of the barrel, you got to be able to fit through the little pores in the barrel. And what can fit through easier, H2O or CH3, CH2OH? So that's kind of one way to look at it.
I just heard, what did you just say?
That was like rudimentary chemistry.
No, what? I thought it was Dave Chappelle doing the alphabet. What the hell's going on here?
Yeah. Got to keep it simple. Yeah.
Nitrogen 14.007.
Well, if you say so.
Made that up. C minus.
108. So it went into the barrel at 110, came out at 108, which is kind of weird that it decreased. But I explained earlier when we first started the distillery, sometimes we were doing leak checks on the barrels. So we'd put like 5 gallons of hot water in the barrel to see if it leaked before we put bourbon in it. So that we probably did that, and it added a little bit of water to the barrel. So we went in at 110, could have settled in at 106, came out at 108. But most of our bourbon is 113 to 118 as out of the barrel. So that it is remarkable that decreased, but that's just one example of what I could give. It could also just aged in a more humid, maybe it was on a low floor in the barrel warehouse. We didn't have as much evaporative loss occurring. That's one of the really important things about barrel aging is evaporative loss.
So Pat and I were talking about this earlier, and then Lewis has a question after this, but we just did a barrel pick with Knob Creek, right? It sold out quickly, and we now have a new barrel pick with Wilderness Trail. Knob Creek's barrel pick is 9.5 years old, and guess how many bottles we got out of a 9.5-year-old barrel from Knob Creek? If you know, don't yell it out, but if you don't know, guess. Let me give you an example. Well, so let me, for comparative purposes, Wilderness Trail, our pick is 4.9.
4 years, 7 months.
7 months, 4.7. So 4 years, 7 months, we have 211 bottle yield from that barrel. So for a 9.5-year-old, what do you think the yield was on that Knob Creek that we just sold out of? 110, 115. We got 120. 120. Now, one of the things Dr. Pat said, maybe it was a leaker. It could have leaked. Who knows, right?
Yep, could have been a leaker.
But Mike Beam, who was just sitting up at that table earlier, he is the representative from Jim Beam. He is a Beam, and Knob Creek is presenting next month. We sold out because we only had 120 bottles. We've sold more than 120 of the Wilderness Trail in the first week. But Mike said that they know for a fact because their yield has been on these 9 to 10-year-old single barrels, which they're doing a lot of, is very, very low because the first 3 summers of that 9.5-year summer were 3 of the hottest summers on record. And he didn't say maybe it's way up in the warehouse, but think about the difference of 120 to 211 in over a course of 4 years.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Mr. Straub, you got a question?
I do. So you've talked a whole lot about your barrels and how you char the barrels. Have you ever done a toasted barrel, and why do you choose charring over toasting if you haven't used a toasted barrel?
Well, if you're going to do toasting, you do that in addition to charring. So we've talked about it, and again, I think that, you know, the reason we're not really staying away from toasting. We just picked what we picked in the onset. You know, like Brown-Forman, for example, makes a big deal out of the toasting, and it does give some really great character. You know, Woodford Reserve, Old Forester, I'm a big fan of those. That banana nut bread that you get from that toasting. But again, you know, we're trying to establish a baseline with a particular type of barrel before we go changing anything. But that's definitely very interesting to us, and we work with a lot of companies that uses various levels of toasting, and we're definitely interested. Anybody else got any questions? My go-to cover song, it depends. If I'm playing in my band, which is called Zella May, check us up on Spotify, Apple, and DistroKid. So it's called Zella May. Zella May. Check us out on Apple, Spotify, and DistroKid. But anyway, my go-to cover song, if I'm at a karaoke bar, I'm going to do David Allan Coe, You Never Even Call Me By My Name. You never even call me by my name.
David Allan Coe, 1978.
That's right.
Second
But if I'm,
side, third song.
If I'm rocking out on the stage, I'm going to do Ozzy Osbourne, Mama, I'm Coming Home. So, yeah. amongst a bunch of other ones.
Hey, Dr. Pat has to drive back to Danville tonight, but do you have time for a few more questions?
Yeah.
Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm good.
Would you sing a little bit more for us? Would you finish the second verse?
Yeah, sure.
All right. All right. Any more questions in the audience?
Well, one of the things about us is we, instead of going with very large distributors, have gone with family-owned, smaller distributorships, which means we're working with multiple distributors. We don't just go with one company that handles all the states we're in. We really want to support, smaller family-owned businesses. And so working with those different distributors and being really coveted in their portfolio, they're working for us. And, we're both benefiting from that. And so we're working together to overcome a lot of the issues that other companies are facing because they're kind of going more mainstream. But that's definitely something with COVID and just as we grow, it becomes more and more difficult. To store it? Yeah. Yeah, well, we're keeping on top of it as good as we can, and, so far we haven't had any major problems, but definitely that's a big challenge for us as we grow. Yeah. That's a good barrel pick.
All right. Any other questions?
Got one over here. Oh, dried grapes, raising awareness. That's a very valid, very noble cause. We fermented raisins, believe it or not.
Okay. Do we have any real questions in here? Jeremy, what are you thinking about, man? You're a great bourbon lover. What's on your mind?
Well, the question was, will we be offering our white dog for sale? We do get a lot of comments on our white dog. I mean, to start off with, we knew we wanted to release our first bourbon as bottle in bond. So that ain't white dog. So we kind of hesitated. But over the years, as we get more and more compliments on it, it kind of if people are interested enough in it, I don't see any reason why we wouldn't do it. But, we're just very protective about anything that goes out the door at our place. We want it to be hopefully fully matured, complex bourbon. But we're thinking about that because we do get a lot of requests for it.
So, Pat, hold on. The Callahan family, they're like into Guinness beer and Irish whiskey. Tell them what White Dog is.
White Dog is the clear distillate that comes off the still before it goes into the barrel. Yeah.
I was being a little facetious. But now you know.
Yeah.
Great question. Tom McGuire.
We don't currently do any secondary aging in wine casks, but it's something we've thought about because a lot of other distilleries are doing it. But we would definitely try it, but again, we're trying to get a really firm baseline on what we're making before we try to change it. But that's hot right now for sure.
Pat, do you have any new expressions in mind that you make, like a double oak? Lewis mentioned toasted. Anything else you're thinking about that you can share with us?
Well, 4 grain, that's something. And then we also do several different barrel experiments, modifying the barrels in various ways. Interior of the barrel, exterior of the barrel. So there are some things in the works that we're doing experimentally.
Hey, Pat, I got a question. I got a question from Facebook. Who is your favorite bourbon club?
Favorite bourbon club is this one right here.
Hey, Pat called me last night. We've been practicing that for about 24 hours. That was good. All right, we have a question.
All right, I needed the microphone for this because I think you and I are the only two that have the same accent.
Oh, nice.
Where the hell are you from?
Well, I was born in Covington, and I've got recordings of myself when I was a little kid, and I don't sound anything like I do now. So I grew up in South Central Kentucky in Clinton County between
Okay.
Dale Hollow and Lake Cumberland.
Okay.
That's where I honed in my linguistic skills.
I am from Eastern Kentucky and proud of it.
Which town? Oh, okay, yeah. I used
So
to
Jeff
be a professor
Foxworthy,
in Pikeville.
Jeff Foxworthy says the family tree in Kentucky only has one branch. I didn't say it. Jeff Foxworthy said it. Question. Oh. I'll come back.
Yeah. You guys damn right. Absolutely.
You know how you can tell a level-headed Kentuckian? Because tobacco juice runs out of both sides of his mouth.
Oh boy. Good one.
What? It's out of control. I think we're going to call it quits. Are there any other, it's not amateur comic night, but is there any other questions? Any other questions? Pat, we really appreciate it.
Thank
Great
you.
night.
Thanks for having me.
Let him know how you feel.
Thank you. Thank you.
I got to tell you, I'll tell you the truth. I really want to thank Ed Comfort. Ed is an executive bourbon steward by title. He works at Corning Glass in Harrodsburg for real life, but he's become a good friend of mine, and he's become a great friend of the Big Bourbon Club. He introduced us to Pat in the company. He also introduced us to Luca Mariano, who's a close partner of Wilderness Trail. But Pat set all of this up for us. Pat, Ed, thank you so much. Really, really, really appreciate it, Ed. So, Pat, great job. When I first went out to the distillery for the pick, I'd never been before. I haven't been to Danville in probably 15 years. And actually, Pat told me this. We were talking earlier tonight, and he told me this, and it's exactly how I felt. But when I went on campus for the first time, I thought it was a small craft distillery. This thing is a major, massive operation. It is, I don't mean real in a bad or a good way, but it is a massive real distillery. It's not a little craft distillery. They have got a massive company. They've created something out of a totally different business that wasn't planned. And this is what American capitalism is all about. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, so the end of the program, we have one more event this year. It is Knob Creek. We'll come out on November the 9th right here to present. And then we take off in December because you're going to be delivering bottles of this barrel pick for Christmas. And we take off in January. And then we'll come back in February, and Cress and I are working on the different schedule for next year. We've talked to probably 15 different distilleries. Buffalo Trace says they'll come out. We know for a fact that Jim Beam will come out with 2 different brands. Basil Hayden will present one night, just Basil. We have Watershed in Columbus, which the ladies went up September 11th and did a barrel pick. Suzanne, stand up. No. She's very defiant at home, too. We have Marble Distilling. Todd went out to Aspen, Colorado with me 2 weeks ago. It was tough business, but somebody had to do it. And we met with a really cool, fully sustainable, you can learn about it next June when they come out, distillery in Carbondale, Colorado. Great friends. They'll be friends for life. Great bourbon. We did a pick. Suzanne, the Boffmans, and the Woosleys. And you'll get to meet them next year. But real quick, what brands or distilleries would you like to see us bring out next year? Because we're filling out the counter. By the way, we just did a pick at Maker's Mark less than 2 weeks ago. They'll be out next year. And we're doing a pick of Ezra Brooks at Lux Row on November 4th with Tom McGuire and maybe Frank. If not Frank, we'll get somebody else. But they'll be out next year. Who do you want to see that I haven't mentioned? Yell them out. Okay, so hold on. Woodford Reserve, we actually did a barrel pick. Raise your hand if you were at the pick with me. Chris was, I know, Jack was, Todd was. We did a pick with Woodford in March 16th, and we haven't heard when we get it yet. So Woodford is supposed to come out, and they promised a barrel pick in addition to the Woodford pick we've done in March of the Double Oak. So we'll get, Chris Morris was scheduled in August, July. We rescheduled it, and we moved Heaven Hill in. But Woodford will come next year. Who else? Michter, we're trying. Elijah Craig. Heaven Hill just came here in July. So I don't know that we'll get Elijah. We just did a barrel pick. Son-in-law. Yellowstone was our first one in March. And by the way, I was going to tell Pat this. Paul Beam, a kid that grew up one street over from me, he's a kid that's older than me, that he's one of the founder owners of Limestone Branch. Paul was on the Facebook Live tonight. Paul's a dear friend, but he was watching tonight. But Yellowstone's been out. Yes, Mike? Okay, here's the deal. If someone brings me the Pappy, I guarantee Suzanne will make the cookies. All right. Thank you all, everybody. Dr. Pat, thank you very much.
Thank you.